What happens when a simple interview spirals into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? The Kelly Clarkson Show has seen its share of awkward exchanges, emotional revelations, and surprise announcements. But nothing could have prepared the audience for what unfolded when interior design expert Bobby Berk sat down on that iconic yellow couch. What started as a conversation about home renovation quickly transformed into a verbal sparring match that left producers scrambling, the audience gasping, and Kelly herself visibly shaken. Before we dive into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which celebrity interview you think went the most sideways. Because trust me, after you hear the story, you'll have a new front-runner for the most chaotic talk show moment of all time. The segment began innocently enough. Kelly bounded onto the stage with her usual infectious energy, her smile wide as she introduced Bobby to thunderous applause. He walked out looking polished in a crisp navy suit, waving to the crowd with the confidence of someone who had done hundreds of these interviews before. The audience, packed with fans who knew him from his years transforming homes and lives on television, cheered enthusiastically. Kelly gestured for him to sit, and as the applause died down, she launched into her opening question with the warmth that had made her one of daytime's most beloved hosts. "Bobby, so good to have you here," Kelly said, leaning forward with genuine enthusiasm. "I have to tell you, I've been binge-watching your new show, and I'm obsessed. The way you transformed that family's living room in episode 3. I mean, I literally cried. How do you manage to make every space feel so personal and meaningful?" Bobby settled into the couch, but there was something slightly guarded in his posture. "Well, Kelly, I appreciate that. For me, it's always been about listening to what people actually need, not just imposing my own vision on their space. Too many designers, and honestly, too many shows, focus on what looks good for the camera rather than what works for real life." Kelly nodded enthusiastically, not catching the subtle edge in his tone. "Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of what works for real life, I saw that you recently did a redesign for a celebrity client. Is that something you can talk about? Because the before and after photos that leaked online were stunning." Bobby's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a tightness appearing around his eyes. Kelly, that's actually a perfect example of what I was just talking about. Those photos were leaked without permission, which violated my client's privacy and turned what should have been a personal, meaningful transformation into tabloid fodder. The media has this way of taking something beautiful and commodifying it, stripping away all the intention and care that went into it. Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment. The audience sensed a shift in energy, a subtle cooling of the temperature in the room. "Oh, I totally get that," she said, recovering quickly. "Privacy is so important, especially in this business. But I think people are just genuinely inspired by the work, They want to see what's possible in their own homes." "Maybe," Bobby replied, his tone measured but pointed. "Or maybe we've created a culture where nothing is sacred anymore, where everyone feels entitled to access every aspect of someone's private life. And I have to say, Kelly, shows like yours kind of feed into that, don't they? This whole format of bringing people on, asking them personal questions, digging into their lives for entertainment value." The audience went quiet. Kelly sat back slightly, her professional smile still in place, but her eyes showing confusion. "I mean, that's the nature of talk shows, Bobby. People come on voluntarily to share their stories, to connect with audiences. Nobody's forcing anyone to be here, right?" "Voluntarily," Bobby said. And now there was no mistaking the skepticism in his voice. "Except when you're promoting a project and your publicist tells you that you need to do the talk show circuit to get exposure. And you end up sitting on couches answering questions that are designed to get a soundbite or a reaction rather than have a real conversation. It becomes less about genuine connection and more about performing authenticity for ratings." Kelly's expression hardened. "Bobby, I have to push back on that. I genuinely care about the people who come on this show. Every conversation I have, I go into it wanting to understand their story, to give them a platform to be heard. If you feel like this is performative, then maybe the issue isn't with the format. Maybe it's with how you're approaching it." Bobby leaned forward now, matching her intensity. "You know what, Kelly? You're right. Let me approach it differently. Let's have a real conversation then. Let's talk about how this industry works. You sit here in your multi-million-dollar studio, backed by a massive production team, asking guests to be vulnerable and authentic while everything is carefully scripted and timed down to the second. How is that real? How is that genuine connection? The producers in the control room were frantically communicating through headsets. In the audience, people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kelly's face flushed slightly, but she maintained her composure. Nothing about this is scripted, Bobby. Yes, we have topics we plan to cover. That's how television works. But the conversations are real. My reactions are real. And I think you know that, which makes me wonder why you're suddenly acting like you're being victimized by a process you agreed to participate in. Bobby's voice rose slightly. Kelly, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The second someone breaks from the expected script, the second someone challenges the comfortable narrative, it gets framed as acting out or being difficult. I came here today thinking we could have an interesting conversation about design, about creativity, about the work I'm passionate about. But every question has been angled toward drama, toward my personal life, toward getting me to say something clickable. Kelly set her note cards down firmly on the side table. Bobby, my first question was literally about your design process. You're the one who took this conversation in a different direction. And honestly, I'm confused about what you want here. Do you want to talk about your work, or do you want to critique the entire talk show format? Because I'm happy to do either. But you need to decide. Maybe I want to do both, Bobby shot back. Maybe I want to talk about my work while also acknowledging that the framework we're doing it in is fundamentally flawed. Why can't those two things coexist? Why does everything have to be so sanitized and comfortable? Real conversation is messy, Kelly. It's uncomfortable. It challenges you. The audience was completely silent now. Every eye fixed on the stage. Kelly took a visible breath, clearly working to control her response. You're right that real conversation can be uncomfortable, but there's a difference between having a challenging conversation and being hostile to someone who invited you onto their show, who prepared thoughtful questions, who wanted to celebrate your work. Right now, you're not being challenging, Bobby. You're being disrespectful. Bobby's jaw tightened. Disrespectful. I'm being honest. And if honesty reads as disrespect to you, that says a lot about what you're used to, doesn't it? How many people sit on this couch and just tell you what you want to hear, play their part in the show, smile and laugh on cue? I'm not doing that. I'm treating you like an intelligent person who can handle a real conversation, even if it's not the conversation you planned. Kelly stood up abruptly, and the audience gasped. For a moment, it seemed like she might walk off her own stage. Instead, she remained standing, looking down at Bobby, who was still seated. You know what? Let's continue this real conversation, then. Since you want honesty, here's some honesty. I've interviewed hundreds of people on this show, celebrities, authors, activists, regular people with extraordinary stories. And the vast majority of them understand that this is a collaboration, that we're working together to create something interesting for the audience. But every once in a while, someone comes on with an agenda, with a chip on their shoulder, looking for a fight. And that's what this feels like, Bobby. Bobby stood up now, too, facing her across the coffee table. An agenda. My agenda is to not pretend that everything is perfect and glossy and simple when it's not. My agenda is to acknowledge that these platforms, including this one, have power and influence, and we should think critically about how they're used. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. It should. It doesn't make me uncomfortable, Kelly said, her voice steady but sharp. What makes me uncomfortable is that you apparently think you're the only person in this room capable of critical thinking. You think you're enlightening me, enlightening the audience, but really you're just being condescending. You came on this show, Bobby. Nobody dragged you here. And now you're acting morally superior for participating in something you claim to have problems with. That's not brave or honest. That's hypocritical. The word hypocritical hung in the air like smoke. Bobby's face darkened, his composure cracking for the first time. Hypocritical. You want to talk about hypocrisy? Let's talk about how you built your entire brand on being relatable, on being the every woman, while sitting on a fortune that most of your viewers will never even comprehend. You talk about understanding people's struggles, but you're so far removed from actual reality that you wouldn't recognize it if it walked onto this stage. The audience audibly gasped. Several people put their hands over their mouths. Kelly's eyes widened, genuine shock registering on her face. Excuse me, Bobby. You need to take a step back right now. You don't know anything about my life, about where I came from, about what I've been through, and you certainly don't get to come onto my show and make assumptions about my character or my intentions. Bobby laughed, but it was harsh and humorless. Your show. That's what this comes down to, isn't it? This is your show, your set, your rules. And when someone doesn't follow them, when someone doesn't treat you with the deference you've come to expect, You can't handle it. You ask me to be vulnerable, to be real, but only in the ways that fit your narrative. The second I'm real in a way that challenges you, suddenly I'm out of line. Kelly pointed a finger at him, something her viewers had never seen her do. No, Bobby, you're out of line because you're attacking me personally instead of having the intellectual conversation you claimed you wanted. You moved the goalpost from critiquing talk shows to insulting me as a person, questioning my authenticity, my background, everything I've worked for. That's not being real. That's just being cruel. Bobby shook his head incredulously. Kelly, do you hear yourself? You live in a bubble where everyone tells you you're amazing, where you're surrounded by people whose jobs depend on keeping you happy. I'm probably the first person in years to tell you something you didn't want to hear, and you're calling it cruel. Maybe what's cruel is the culture of fake niceness that prevents anyone from having honest conversations about power dynamics and privilege in this industry. Kelly crossed her arms. You want to talk about privilege, Bobby? You're standing here on national television with your own shows, your own brand deals, your own platform, acting like you're some kind of revolutionary speaking truth to power. But you have just as much privilege as I do. The difference is I don't pretend I'm better than everyone else because of how I choose to use it. I don't come onto other people's shows and insult them under the guise of authenticity. I'm not insulting you, Bobby, he insisted, though his tone suggested otherwise. I'm holding up a mirror. And if you don't like what you see, that's not my problem. You asked me questions. I'm giving you answers. They're just not the answers you wanted. Not the neat little sound bites that fit between commercial breaks. This is what real discourse looks like, Kelly. It's messy and uncomfortable. And it doesn't resolve neatly in 42 minutes. Kelly took a step closer to him, her voice dropping, but somehow becoming more intense. You keep using that word real like you have a monopoly on authenticity. But let me tell you what's real, Bobby. Real is showing up every single day and trying to make people feel seen and heard. Real is using whatever platform I have to amplify voices that might not otherwise get heard. Real is treating my guests and my audience with respect, even when we disagree. What you're doing right now isn't real. It's self-indulgent. You're treating my audience like props. Bobby's eyes flashed. Your audience, Kelly. These people aren't yours. They're human beings with their own thoughts and opinions. And maybe, just maybe, they're tired of the carefully curated version of conversation they get fed every day. Maybe they actually appreciate seeing two people have a genuine disagreement instead of the sanitized, pre-approved content that passes for discourse on shows like this. Then let's ask them, Kelly said suddenly, turning to face the audience. Several production assistants in the wings waved their arms frantically, trying to signal her to stop, but she ignored them. Seriously, let's get real feedback. Audience, show of hands. How many of you are feeling enlightened by this conversation? How many of you think this is valuable television? The audience sat frozen, clearly uncomfortable being put on the spot. A few hands raised tentatively, then lowered. Most people just stared, uncertain how to respond. Bobby turned to look at them too, his expression unreadable. See, Kelly, you can't even let them respond authentically. You're weaponizing them, using them to make your point. That's not giving them a voice. That's using them as ammunition. Kelly turned back to him, her face flushed with anger now. Oh, that is rich coming from you. You've spent this entire interview using me as your punching bag to make some vague point about media criticism. You haven't talked about your work, your projects, the things you're supposedly passionate about. All you've done is tear down what I've built, question my motives, and act superior. And you call that giving people something authentic. I call it refusing to participate in the charade, Bobby fired back. Every day, hundreds of shows like this air, and everyone plays their part. The host asks softball questions. The guest gives charming answers. Everyone laughs at the right moments, and nobody says anything that matters. I'm giving your audience credit for being able to handle substance, even if you're not. Kelly's voice rose. Substance? Bobby, you haven't said anything substantive this entire time. You've made broad accusations about the media, about talk shows, about me personally, but you haven't offered a single concrete example, a single alternative, a single constructive idea. It's easy to tear things down. It's easy to sit back and criticize and act intellectually superior. What's hard is actually building something, creating something, contributing something positive, which is what I try to do every single day with this show. Positive, Bobby repeated mockingly. Is that what we're calling it, Kelly? Your show is a business. It's designed to sell advertising to keep viewers engaged, so they'll watch commercials to promote products and projects. There's nothing wrong with that. It's capitalism. It's how the industry works. But don't dress it up as some altruistic mission to connect with people. You're selling a product just like I am, just like everyone in this industry is. The difference is, I'm willing to admit it. Kelly's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You know what, Bobby? You're right about one thing. This is a business. And part of that business is deciding who I want on this show, who I want to give a platform to. And right now I'm realizing I made a mistake because I brought you here thinking we could have an interesting conversation about design, about creativity, about your journey. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of performance art piece about how enlightened you are and how shallow everyone else is. Performance art, Bobby said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. That's perfect, actually, because that's exactly what this whole format is, Kelly. It's performed intimacy, performed friendship, performed care. You sit here and you ask people about their lives and you make sympathetic faces and you touch their arm at the right moment. But it's all choreographed. It's all designed to create a parasocial relationship with viewers who think they know you, who think this is real. Kelly stepped even closer until they were barely 3 feet apart. You want to know what's real, Bobby? What's real is that I'm seconds away from asking you to leave my stage. What's real is that you've insulted me, insulted my show, insulted my audience, and you've done it all while acting like you're doing everyone a favor. What's real is that I've had enough. Bobby smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Then ask me to leave, Kelly. Go ahead. Prove my point. Show everyone watching that the second someone challenges the narrative, the second someone refuses to play along, they get silenced. Kick me off your show and let's see how that looks. The tension was suffocating. The audience sat in complete silence, transfixed by the confrontation. Camera operators zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression, every moment of the standoff. Kelly stared at Bobby, her chest rising and falling with barely controlled emotion. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but intense. You think you're some kind of martyr, don't you? You think getting kicked off a talk show makes you brave, makes you principled, but it doesn't, Bobby. It just makes you someone who doesn't know how to have a respectful conversation with someone they disagree with. Respect has to be earned, Bobby shot back. And honestly, Kelly, after sitting here and watching you perform your concern, your interest, your authenticity, I don't think you've earned it. I think you've built a very successful career on being likable, and that's great for you. But likability isn't the same as integrity. Kelly's face went pale, then flushed red. Get out. The 2 words echoed through the studio. Get out. For a moment, nobody moved. Bobby stood there, his expression unreadable, while Kelly remained rooted in place, her arm now extended toward the wings in a clear gesture of dismissal. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of what was rapidly becoming one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. Excuse me, Bobby said, his voice dangerously calm. You're actually doing this. You're actually proving every single point I just made. Kelly's arm didn't waver. Yes, Bobby, I'm asking you to leave. Not because you challenged me. Not because you have different opinions, but because you've been disrespectful, condescending, and hostile from almost the moment you sat down. This isn't a conversation anymore. It's a verbal assault, and I don't have to stand here and take it on my own show. Bobby laughed, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. Verbal assault. That's incredible, Kelly. Do you realize what you sound like right now? Someone disagrees. Bobby took a step back, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Bait you into a fight. Kelly, you're the one who kept pushing. You're the one who accused me of being hypocritical, of being cruel. I responded to your questions. I engaged with your points. If you can't handle someone engaging with you on an intellectual level without performing the expected difference, that's on you, not me. Intellectual level? Kelly repeated, her voice tight. Bobby, there's nothing intellectual about what you've been doing. You've been throwing around accusations and insults and calling it discourse. You've questioned my integrity, my authenticity, my connection to my audience. You've mocked everything about this show while sitting on the furniture we provided, under the lights we set up, in front of the cameras we operate. And now you're acting like you're the victim because I'm not tolerating it anymore. The audience was still frozen, watching this play out like spectators at a car crash. A few people had their phones out, clearly recording despite the no-phone policy. Security guards had moved closer to the stage area, uncertain whether they needed to intervene. The producers in the control room were in chaos. Some arguing they needed to cut to commercial immediately. Others insisting they had to let this play out for the ratings. Bobby's expression hardened. So that's it then. That's your final word. Someone doesn't play by your rules, doesn't perform gratitude for being allowed into your presence, and they get kicked out. And you'll edit this however you want. Make yourself look reasonable and me look unstable, and your audience will never know what really happened here. What really happened here, Kelly said, her voice gaining strength, is that I invited a guest onto my show who decided to use that platform not to share his work or his perspective, but to attack the very concept of the show itself. And when I pushed back, when I defended myself and my team and what we've built, you escalated. You kept pushing and pushing, trying to get me to this exact point so you could claim victimhood. Well, congratulations, Bobby. You got what you wanted. You're getting kicked off the show. I'm sure that'll play great for your brand. Bobby's jaw clenched. My brand? Of course, that's what you think this is about. Because in your world, everything is about brand management and image control and playing the game. It couldn't possibly be that someone genuinely has principles they're not willing to compromise. That someone values honesty over likability. No, it must be a calculated move for personal gain. You don't get to lecture me about principles, Kelly fired back, her composure completely gone now. You don't get to stand there and act morally superior while you insult someone who's done nothing but try to give you a platform. You talk about honesty, but you've been dishonest from the start. You accepted this booking knowing exactly what kind of show this is. You came here with an agenda, and now you're shocked that there are consequences for how you've behaved. That's not principles, Bobby. That's just being disingenuous. Consequences? Bobby said, seizing on the word. There it is. Step out of line. Face consequences, stay in your lane, play your part, or get punished. That's the message, right? And you wonder why everything feels so sterile, so safe, so meaningless. Because anyone who tries to inject some reality, some substance, some actual challenge into these spaces gets silenced. Kelly moved closer to him again, her voice dropping to something almost dangerous. You want to know what's meaningless, Bobby? This entire conversation. Because you haven't said anything. You haven't made any actual points. You've just lobbed grenades and acted enlightened when people react to the explosions. That's not substance. That's just chaos. And I'm done with it. Security. At that word, 2 security guards started moving toward the stage. Bobby held up a hand to stop them, his eyes locked on Kelly. Don't touch me. I'm leaving. But let me say this first. He turned to address the cameras directly, ignoring Kelly entirely. Everyone watching this, everyone who saw this entire exchange, you just witnessed what happens when someone refuses to play the game. You saw how quickly the mask drops, how fast the performative kindness disappears, when someone doesn't bow and scrape appropriately. This is your beloved Kelly Clarkson, everyone. This is who she really is when the script doesn't go her way. Kelly moved between Bobby and the camera, her face flushed with anger. No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to turn this around and make yourself the hero of this story. You came onto my show. You were disrespectful and hostile. And now you're trying to spin it like you're some kind of truth teller being silenced. But everyone watching saw what really happened. They saw you attack me unprovoked. They saw you escalate at every turn. They saw you refuse every attempt I made to bring this back to a productive conversation. Bobby laughed bitterly. Productive, right? Productive means agreeable, means compliant, means giving you what you want. I wasn't unprovoked, Kelly. You provoked this the moment you asked questions designed to get me to sell myself, to package my work into neat little digestible chunks for your audience. I just refused to do it, and you can't handle that. I can't handle it? Kelly's voice rose to almost a shout. Bobby, I've handled this entire disaster of an interview with more grace than you deserved. I've tried to engage with you. I've tried to understand what you actually want from this conversation, and all you've done is attack. So yes, I'm asking you to leave. Not because I can't handle challenging conversations, but because you're not interested in a conversation at all. You're interested in a soapbox, and I'm not giving you mine anymore. The security guards were on the stage now, flanking Bobby, but not touching him. He looked at them, then back at Kelly, then out at the audience. Several people in the crowd looked away when his eyes swept over them, uncomfortable with the intensity of the moment. This is how it ends, then. This is what happens when you tell the truth in these spaces. You get escorted out by security while the host plays victim. The truth, Kelly said. And now there were tears of frustration in her eyes. You keep saying that word like it means something. But your truth, Bobby, is just your opinion. Your truth is your perception filtered through your biases and your agenda. It's not objective reality. And the fact that you can't tell the difference between having an opinion and speaking universal truth is exactly why this conversation has been so impossible. Bobby started walking toward the wings, the security guards following. But he stopped at the edge of the stage, turning back one more time. You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. This is impossible. It's impossible to have a real conversation with someone who's so invested in their own image that they can't hear any criticism without treating it as a personal attack. I actually came here today hoping we could talk about something real, something meaningful. But you're so trapped in your performance that you can't even recognize authenticity when it's in front of you. Kelly's hands were shaking now. Get out. Just get out, Bobby. This is over. Bobby gave a mocking salute. It was over before it started. He walked off the stage, disappearing into the wings with the security guards. The second he was out of sight, Kelly turned back to face her audience. The cameras were still rolling, capturing her standing alone on the stage, visibly shaken, her chest heaving with emotion. She took a deep breath, running her hands through her hair. When she spoke, her voice was raw. Wow. I don't even know what to say right now. I've never, in all my years doing the show, I've never had an interview go that way. And I'm sorry you all had to witness that. I'm sorry that what was supposed to be a fun conversation about design and creativity turned into whatever that was. The audience sat in stunned silence. A few people started clapping tentatively, and then more joined in until the entire studio was applauding Kelly. She smiled weakly, wiping at her eyes. Thank you. Thank you for that. I need everyone to know that this show has always been about creating a space where people feel safe to share their stories, to be vulnerable, to connect. And what just happened? That wasn't connection. That wasn't conversation. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't what we stand for here. She paused, collecting herself. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to move on. We have an incredible musical performance lined up, and I think we could all use something uplifting after that. So, stay with us. We'll be right back. The stage manager called cut, and Kelly immediately walked off to the wings, her professional mask finally crumbling. The audience sat buzzing with conversation, everyone trying to process what they just witnessed. Camera operators and producers rushed around, already planning how to handle the footage, whether to air it, how to control the narrative before clips inevitably leaked online. In the green room, Bobby was gathering his things, his face impassive. A production assistant hovered nervously nearby, unsure what to say or do. Bobby ignored her, slinging his bag over his shoulder and heading for the exit without a word to anyone. His phone was already buzzing with messages, notifications piling up as word of the confrontation spread through industry channels. Back on the stage, the audience slowly filed out during the extended break, everyone talking excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Some defended Kelly, insisting Bobby had been out of line from the start. Others argued he'd made valid points that Kelly had overreacted. A few people were already posting on social media their first-hand accounts, adding fuel to what would quickly become a firestorm. The show eventually continued, though Kelly was visibly shaken through the remaining segments. The musical guest performed. The audience clapped and sang along. And on the surface, everything returned to normal. But everyone in that studio knew they'd witnessed something that would be talked about for a long time. A moment when the carefully maintained facade of daytime television had cracked wide open, revealing the tensions and conflicts that usually stayed hidden behind professional smiles and scripted banter. So, what do you think? Was Bobby right to challenge the format and call out what he saw as performative authenticity? Or did he cross a line by attacking Kelly personally on her own show? Drop a comment below and let me know your take. And don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, we're going to be breaking down the fallout from this for weeks to come.